We are going to. Good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are from. My name is Cecilia Dong. Welcome to the CDS Lab Research Coordination Network webinar series. I'm very happy to welcome Brian Biesemeyer to give our next presentation. Professor Qingwen Cheng from ASU will introduce our speaker. Qingwen.
Thank you, Cecilia. Hi, I'm Associate Professor of Landscape Architecture at Design School at Arizona State University and part of this CTS Lab Research Network, and has this pleasure and privilege to help to coordinate this Water Nexus series and invite one of our most innovative cities in our region to talk about this water management. And so our speaker today is Mr. Brian Biesemeyer, who is the Executive Director of Scottsdale Water. And since 2015, he worked in the city as acting city manager, and then he worked as Executive Director after 2017. And he is a retired U.S. Army lieutenant colonel with over 30 years of organizational leadership experience. And he's a registered professional environmental engineer and holds Arizona's Department of Environmental Quality Grateful Operator certifications in water treatment, wastewater treatment, water distribution, and wastewater collection. So Brian is the past president of Water Reuse Arizona, a board member of the Water Reuse Association, and a commissioner on the State of Arizona Water Protection Fund. So without further ado, we'll welcome Mr. Biesemeyer and to share his talk. Thank you. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that. Again, Brian Biesemeyer, Executive Director for Scottsdale Water. And let me see if I can make sure I'm doing. There we go. I thought I'd start out by just talking about a little bit about Scottsdale. Not sure what everybody knows about Scottsdale, but Scottsdale is a long, narrow city. We're on the northeast side, the Phoenix metro area. Population a little over 250,000, possible build out around 300,000. Most of our new growth is in the north, although we have substantial redevelopment occurring in South Scottsdale. 184, almost 185 square miles. We're 31 miles long, and only at our widest portion, 11 miles wide. In some areas, only several miles wide. It causes some challenges in the water world, in the fact that, as most people know, water weighs a little over 8 pounds a gallon. And when you're required to deliver water up large elevations, it takes a lot of energy, it takes a lot of planning and infrastructure to do that. And the same with wastewater. When you return wastewater, most wastewater goes by gravity, but there are valleys and such that you have to pump it to. And then in Scottsdale, we have some unique situations where we pump wastewater north to get it to our treatment facility. So it provides challenges to us as you work in the water and wastewater arena. Scottsdale Water, we're a full service water provider. We provide drinking water service. So we collect that water, we treat the water, we distribute the water. We're a wastewater provider, so we then collect the wastewater, we treat it, and then we have recycled water systems as well, where we deliver recycled water for turf irrigation, as well as recycled water that's been treated and then for aquifer recharge. We have over 215 full-time employees that work throughout our city, and they include extensive labs. So we have our own lab facility up at our water campus to enable us to do our own water quality sampling, both for permits, but also just for our own internal use. Scottsdale Water's vision water sustainability through stewardship, innovation, and people. This is a vision that we've had, and it predates me. I'm happy to say it's been a vision we've had for decades in the water department. And I think it really suits us because we are about the water sustainability, and that doesn't happen unless we're stewards of that water resource, we're innovative, and it all depends on the people we get. And we have some awesome folks. If you ever thinking of a good job, look at the City of Scottsdale website. If you can see a Scottsdale Water job, I'd encourage folks to apply. I think we have a great organization, but it all focuses back on people. So a little bit of history, because we talked about our history of sustainable water practices, but that history doesn't go back forever. Scottsdale Water actually started in 1971, and we were acquired from several private water companies in the area that were acquired by the City of Scottsdale, as well as some of the City of Phoenix's area, service area that was in Scottsdale. And so our roots started in 1971. This is our 50th anniversary year. But we didn't start on a sustainable basis. We started with 100% groundwater. And that's just what we got from those private water providers. So 1980, 100% groundwater. A key component in 1980 was the passage of the 1980 Groundwater Management Act. And I think that's really what brought the lights on for Scottsdale about sustainability. So with that, Scottsdale started a long process of becoming more sustainable with our water resources. And it is a long process. You can't turn around and do things overnight. So when we look at, well, what happened after that, and by 1996, you can see a dramatic change in our water portfolio. We are now 46% with surface water, still a large portion with groundwater at 52%, but then you also see recycled water starting to get in there. And I've got some discussion about that on some follow-up slides. So then what happened by 2020? Well, by 2020, you can see a dramatic change. So 63% of our water source is from surface water, either CAP or SRP water. We show recycled water at 12%, and then you see groundwater at 10%. I will, however, stipulate when you look at that groundwater, and I put an asterisk on purpose up there. So while we used in 2020, we used almost 13,000 acre feet of water. Over that same period of time, we recharged almost 17,000 acre feet of water. So while it shows groundwater, that's where we actually got it out. That has been recharged water. It's been actually recycled into our groundwater so that we have reached safe yield, meaning we put more water in the ground than we take out. And we've done that every year since 2006. And so while I'll show groundwater, because that's technically where it comes from, I always have to put that caveat in there. So how did this happen? How did we make that dramatic transformation? Now, granted, it was over 40 years, but it still was a dramatic transformation. I talked about the 1980 Groundwater Management Act, and really, I think that was the key that started us out, was the passage of that in the state of Arizona. And with that, Scottsdale paid attention, and there was a commitment by Scottsdale citizens, our leadership, to sustainable water practices. Also, the recognition that all water has value, a one water concept. We need to look at our wastewater as a valuable asset and not as just something to dispose of. And then a willingness to invest in water and wastewater facilities. Communities have to be willing to do that and make that hard investment. And set up mechanisms that they can maximize other means of finding revenue as well. But cities and communities have to be willing to make that investment. It is a big investment. I will make some arguments that it doesn't mean that your rates have to necessarily be the highest around when you make these investments. You can make smart investments, and we try to do that all the time. And then the last thing, a commitment to our vision. I think our workforce has been committed to that vision for decades, and it makes a difference. So a little of our history of sustainable water practices. Well, first thing really, so I talked about the 1980 Groundwater Management Act. So shortly after that, 1981, the city invested in the Gainey Ranch Water Reclamation Facility and as a source of water for the Gainey Ranch Golf Club. So 1981, I believe this marks the first facility in the state devoted entirely for recycled water. Tucson and Scottsdale have a running discussion about who started first, because I know that they had their Reed Park or the Randolph Park reclamation facility in the early 1980s as well. But it started with us in 1981 with the Gainey Ranch facility. And then conservation awareness. I'm proud of the fact that in 1982, we started our conservation programs to make people aware of the need to conserve and how better to manage water for their own use and for the community's use. Now, this is a continual process. I won't say that we've solved that. I mean, you can go in Scottsdale and you can see some pretty lush and green areas. So it's a continual process, but we started on that in 1982, and it has made a difference. And I have one of my last slide, I believe, in the whole show demonstrates that. Then our Scottsdale Water Campus. And so you can see there's a big jump in time, but our Scottsdale Water Campus took a lot of planning and work. And so our water campus is 145 acres. It's located just north of the 101 and west of Pima Road. So if you're going north on the 101 through Scottsdale and it starts to turn to the west, as it starts to loop around to the west, you can look on your right and you can see a large facility. And most of what you're seeing is our CAP water treatment facility there. And the northern part of it's our reclamation facilities. But it's 145 acres. We had to acquire the land. We had to build a lot of infrastructure associated with bringing wastewater and bringing the water from the CAP Canal up to that facility. So it started way before 1998. But in 1998, we went live with that. Currently today, it's a CAP surface water treatment facility of 70 million gallons a day. And we are going to expand that plant in the next 5 years to go to 90 million gallons a day. We have a water reclamation facility at 20 million gallons a day. And then on the back end of that, we have an advanced water treatment facility at 20 million gallons a day that has ozone ultrafiltration, reverse osmosis, and UV photolysis. We treat that water to better than drinking water standards. And then we use that water for two end uses, for recharge and then for golf course / turf irrigation, because we also use it at several parks as well for turf irrigation. It's 20 million gallons a day because in the summer, the whole system will be used for turf irrigation, but in the winter, it's very little of it's used for irrigation, and that's when we do the majority of our recharge. I also have to say at our water campus, another feature that makes our water campus unique is we have a full service lab that I mentioned earlier. It's also at that facility. So it's a large facility. A lot of investment has gone into that facility, over $500 million, so over $500 million of investment in that facility alone. So as we go on, and I mentioned safe yield. So because of our water campus and our commitment to being a sustainable water provider, we have achieved safe yield since 2006, meaning we've put more water in the ground than we've taken out since that time, and every year since that time. And then in 2007, we constructed our Chaparral water treatment facility. This too is a membrane bioreactor. I'm sorry, not a bioreactor. It's a membrane water treatment facility, treating Salt River Project water with through our membranes, and providing that water for Scottsdale. Now, prior to that, we had the Salt River Project. The Arizona Canal runs right through Scottsdale. We had used some of that water for turf irrigation, but we had not really been using that for potable drinking water purposes. So after 2007, we are using our surface water allocation from the Salt River and the Verde rivers to provide drinking water for Scottsdale. And then we had a one water optimization control room put in 2012. And this seems like a small thing, just put in a control room, but it's not a large facility, but it's a key facility. And the fact that we had to staff up for it. So I have 5 operators and a supervisor that man that facility 24/7, 365 days a year. That facility really is the control room for all of our operations, because we have control rooms for our treatment facilities and they manage those treatment facilities. But it's important, as complicated as our system is, if you think about it. So we have a drinking water system that has 2 major facilities as well as a number of wells. And we have some arsenic treatment, we have some Superfund treatment, we have a number of different treatment mechanisms going on throughout our long, narrow city to provide water to our customers who need it out on demand. We have a wastewater system. We have lift stations that pump that wastewater to our treatment facilities. And then we have a reclaim system, and we have recharge going on. We have multiple orders. We have CAP water orders coming in. We have SRP water orders coming in that we have to place and use those appropriately. So for us, we thought it was key that we had one control room, one set of folks that managed that and helped us facilitate things and you don't probably think about it much, but when we bring something down for maintenance and we cause a maintenance activity to happen, if we're not managing everything else well, we can trip and cause costs and other things throughout our system without managing and planning that. So really our optimization control room has been key to enable us to efficiently manage our water sources and make the most of them. Boulder Dam Hydropower. So around 2000, I believe it was around 2010, the federal government put out an offer for water utilities throughout Arizona to bid or apply for Boulder Dam Hydropower. Scottsdale did. We were selected. Our application was accepted, and so I just think it's great. We get, not only do we get water off the Colorado River, we get power off the Colorado River. We get carbon-free power off the Colorado River. It's a 2.3 megawatts, or 2.4 actually megawatts of power that we have allocated to us. That makes up about 25% of the power of our water campus. Comes in through Boulder Dam Hydropower. Investments in watershed management and forest health. Well, we recognize, particularly with our SRP treatment facility, our Chaparral treatment facility, that our water is tied to the forests of northern Arizona. And when fires occur, starting with the rodeo Chetasky and then moving forward, we've seen massive fires in the forests of northern Arizona, and they've impacted us. So they have brought soot and carbon and debris down to such an extent that it's actually caused at certain times for us to even shut down our Chaparral water treatment facility because we couldn't handle the debris load in the canal. So it became clear to us we needed to be part of a solution. And so we invest every year in watershed management and forest health through the Northern Arizona Forest Foundation, which is managed by the National Forest Foundation. Or I should say it's the Northern Arizona Forest Fund, which is managed by the National Forest Foundation. And it seeks to restore riparian areas and manage forest health by thinning and other operations in the forest to, one, reduce the risk of forest fires, and two, to restore the natural waterways there to provide better health in the watershed. And we recognize that through that better health, our water is pure, and there's when you keep a healthy forest, the runoff is more stable. You don't see large slugs, you see a much more stable runoff from the forest. And we believe in that, and we've been doing that investment since 2016. our Citizens Academy. So on the picture on the lower left, you can see graduates of one of our recent Citizens Academies. I believe it's important to get our citizens involved, and the more our citizens are involved and know about what we do, the more they can help support what we do, the more we are free to make these sustainable solutions with citizen support. I was kind of amazed when I came here, and I've been with Scottsdale since 2012, but I was surprised. We do a citizen survey every 3 years or so, where we survey our citizens' thoughts about service, all types of services that the city provides, and I was amazed that we didn't in Scottsdale Water get higher ratings. We got okay ratings, but they weren't, they just were just okay. They weren't the highest ratings, and they certainly, I don't think, reflected our employees' commitment, our council's commitment to water, and all the things we do. So I employed a phone survey to investigate that. And through this phone survey, we went out and surveyed people about their thoughts on water services, and then gave them a 2 or 3 minute blurb about all the things we do. And then we surveyed them again at the end of the conversation, very similar, not the same questions, but similar questions about their feelings about Scottsdale Water. And they improved dramatically, which really demonstrated to me that we needed to help educate our citizens. And one of the ways was a Citizens Academy. Our fire and police department have great Citizens Academy. So we kind of took from that mold and started our Citizens Academy in 2017. It's been amazingly successful. We opened the registration for that up on one day, and it'll close within 2 or 3 hours by people calling in or emailing in their desire to register for that academy. And unfortunately, with the pandemic, we didn't hold that in 2020, but we're hopeful that in the fall we'll be able to start our academy again. And then lastly, we're the first facility in the state of Arizona to receive a direct potable reuse permit. So in prior to 2018, it was illegal to do direct potable reuse of water, to serve recycled water to folks as a drinking water. In 2018, the state opened up that and changed the regulation to allow that. And then we pursued it. You might ask, so why direct potable reuse for Scottsdale? Well, for several reasons. The goal of our permit, we were asked by ADQ to actually start the permit process because they wanted to go through the permit process with somebody they had confidence that had been doing recycled water and had been doing it well for a number of years. We have the infrastructure and the facilities to make it happen. And so it seemed like a great fit. We were excited to do that with DEQ. We also believe it would help normalize public relations for the state as a whole about the use of recycled water, get rid of the yuck factor that people tend to go to with that. And then I have to admit, it demonstrates Scottsdale Water's technology to the public. So we'll go into all the details, but because of our advanced water treatment facility, we really didn't have to do much. We actually built this little skid as some additional tertiary treatment. It involved the redundant UV, a GAC for polishing purposes, and we had to remineralize it because if you think about RO water, it's been stripped of a lot of minerals, so you have to remineralize it. And then a chiller. People always like cold water. It helps when you serve that. So there's a little drinking fountain we put up at our plant. We serve folks that go through our academy. We also produce water for different events. And the first one was the One Water Brewing Showcase. So in 2019, we teamed up with Canal Convergence, which is one of our premier arts and education events. And we put the world's first beer festival featuring only beer brewed with recycled water. As best we know, that's an accurate statement. Certainly was Arizona's first. So it was great. The theme of Canal Convergence was the history of water. And we were able to offer beer. So what we did was team up with 10 different local breweries, gave them each between 750 to 1,000 gallons of our recycled water. They brewed it up and brought that water to brought that water, which was now beer, to Canal Convergence and served that over the weekend of November 8th and 9th. We had over 60,000 folks come through. We sold out of beer. It was an awesome event. This is just a picture, and you can see in this picture, so you see the canopies for the different breweries. So we had 5 breweries each night. And then there's 6 tents, and the 6th tent was our educational tent, because we wanted to combine both the fun of a beer festival with some education of folks about the water that has been used to brew that beer. Had a lot of fun. A lot of folks came through. You can see the gentleman in the bottom right's got a little flyer that we put out about what this was about. But I can tell you, there's a number of folks came through and didn't even know what. They just wanted to taste some beer. And then it was a nice surprise when we told them where their water came from. But again, a great event. And then these are pictures of our educational tent and some of the materials we had out in discussions with people as they came through the festival, and just a good time as well as an educational opportunity. So I don't think I could get through this. I'm talking about sustainability without talking about Drought and Scottsdale and where we are. It's on everybody's mind, or most people's mind these days. So I'll give a little update of where Scottsdale is in terms of the drought on the Colorado River. So Lake Mead is at record low levels. It's actually below 40%. This little diagram was done several months ago, but it's actually below 40%. And the federal government, as well as the basin states for the Colorado River, devised a drought contingency plan to address the shortages that look like the coming shortages on the Colorado River. And the way they address that, and the way the lower basin states measure water availability, is through the levels of Lake Mead. And so this diagram is a little confusing, but attempts to show the different tiers. On the left, you can see the lake level in different tiers. Tier 0, which is at level 1090. We've been in tier 0 shortage for the last year. And then tier 1 is below 1075, tier 2 below 1050, and so on. And then the color, it's color coded. So at the right, you can see the amount of water that is shorted from the Central Arizona project system into Arizona. So the purple tier 0 correlates to that little purple box for 192,000 acre feet of shortage. So that has been occurring. That water has basically been taken from agricultural use. Tier 2, though, you can see it jumps to 512,000 acre foot shortage to the Central Arizona project. That's roughly a third of the Central Arizona project for water deliveries. It's a big cut. It's significant, and that is what we look like we're going into, almost assuredly going into for 2022. So impacts to cap water. This basically is kind of shows on the right, shows the CAP priority deliveries. And you can see at tier 0 where it hits, and it's taken, as I mentioned, mostly from the ag pool of water for agricultural users. Now, when we hit 1075, you can see it dips down into an area, the NIA priority. That's non-Indian ag priority water. And while it says non-Indian ag, it's a name. It doesn't necessarily represent who has that water, because Scottsdale has some of that water. Even some of the Indian tribes have some of that water. But it's just a different level of priority. And you can see when we hit that, the impacts to Scottsdale on the left, you can see our water portfolio of our CAP. You can see that there is at risk for us a total potential of 3,300 acre feet of Colorado River water. Most of our other water is MIA, municipal and industrial priority water, and which is a higher priority even still. And admittedly, this is a confusing graphic up here, but really the big point is, and you can see in the top, the tier shortages of this Colorado River or CAP water. And then at the very bottom, you can see the impacts that we estimate will be for Scottsdale. Now we estimate because a lot of it depends on different deliveries. Everybody puts in their request for deliveries, and CAP and the Bureau of Reclamation, basically CAP sorts through that and then gives people their water requirements for the priority. So if somebody doesn't order water, there's more for others, and thus it's not an exact process every year for me to say exactly what it is, but these are our estimates. So you can see at tier 1, we believe we're at risk for about 2,300 acre feet of CAP shortage. Now, interior to the state of Arizona, there was another state drought contingency plan, which allows for some mitigation of that. And in year 2022, there's still mitigating effects. So I think Scottsdale will see even less than 2,300 acre feet of shortage. But that's the max that we estimate we would see. And then tier 2 and tier 2B, you can see it just continues to ramp up to tier 3. And then at protect level, at the protect level, it's quite substantial. So what are we doing? Oh, we're doing what we normally do because we believe in sustainable water solutions, but we're expanding our conservation and messaging. That will go out. We anticipate going into our own stage 1 of our drought management plan. We have been increasing our aquifer storage and recovery well capacity. In 2019, we started an initiative to drill 4 new wells that gave us increased capacity to recharge and then recover that water. We believe that while we are in a drought, if you look at droughts as a whole and long-term droughts and climate change, there are still wet years and dry years. There tends to be more dry years, thus the drought, but there will still be wet years. And we want the capability to recharge our water when we have it. And that's what these ASR wells represent. We're expanding our recycled water irrigation systems where feasible, and looking into continued expansion of those facilities. And we're going to expand our AMI meter network. So that's advanced metering technology. And we've been working on that for several years. Currently, we anticipate by the end of this year, we will have all of our customers on automated meter reading. That's basically drive-by meter reading. There won't be any manual meter reading. It's just people will drive by, or we have fixed towers where we get that meter data. And we're expanding that fixed tower network. Currently, we have about 40,000 of our customers on that fixed tower network. And that's important because it feeds into a smart portal, a website portal, where customers can actually look and get their own hourly consumption data. It's near real time for our customers on what water they're using. We believe ultimately it's going to be our customers saving water that will continue to help us reduce our water consumption. Our Water Smart customer interface, I can show up here. It does a number of things: high usage bills, comparisons to previous months, and then with hourly data, you can just, a lot of data is there. We have a lot of tutorials there. We think it's a smart component of what we do. And lastly, I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation about conservation and our commitment to conservation, and it has an impact. And yes, I do believe it has an impact. And so this graph shows the blue bars are a potable water consumption since 2006. Again, that's a kind of a key year. That's when we made safe yield. Since that time, our water consumption annually has been actually on a slight decline. 2020 is not here. I can tell you that 2020 is very similar to 2006. So it will be a very large usage year, but that was due to abnormally hot and dry conditions both in the winter and the summer. But even with that factored in, and we're still at a slight decline in our water consumption over this 14-year period. And yet we have seen an increase. The red line there is the number of water meter connections. So we've gone up from 86,000 to over 92,000 in that period of time. So we have grown, and yet our water consumption has not increased. So yes, we believe in water conservation. Yes, we think it works. Can we do more? Yes, and we need to. And that concludes my presentation on Scottsdale Water and our history of sustainable water practices, and I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. I think that Professor Ching-Wen had a question actually from earlier. Professor Ching-Wen?
Thank you. Well, first of all, thank you so much for your time and sharing with us the experience of Scottsdale. It's really amazing to see from especially the outreach to the community and your kind of innovations, thinking ahead of the conservation strategies and to be a safe yield for decades. That's I think it's really a great achievement. My question probably more towards to how do you feel about for example, that beer brewing, the toilet to tap, this these strategies, it's very innovative, and actually around the world are trying to implement this. And what are the challenges you are facing, and do you think this can be one of the sustaining strategies to move forward for a more one water sustainable water resources management like policies? And how would you get buy-in? What are the challenges you are facing with implementing some of those the new ideas?
Great question, and let me see if I can. That goes into a lot of different areas. I'll start first with DPR because I think it is an important issue, and it's important for us to in Arizona and in through the United States and the world to get past that yuck factor, to recognize that's a water resource for folks, particularly with climate change and drought impacting many areas. It is a water resource we need to take a hold of and use. The state of Arizona, as I mentioned, changed their regulations in 2018. There's another phase. They need to do a little bit more on the regulatory front. And I know Water Reuse Arizona, as well as the Water Reuse Association, has been working with DEQ to try to get that next phase of regulatory guidance out there. I think that'll be critical because I see in Arizona, I don't see Scottsdale going into DPR anytime soon because our IPR, or indirect potable reuse, has been so effective, and because we have this large storage in our aquifer that we can continue to do. We may get to direct potable reuse as a permanent solution, but probably not in the next 5, maybe even 10 years. Again, because of our DPR or IPR being so effective. But there are other areas where there's no solutions like that. And I think particularly in surrounding the valley and some of the more rural areas, the only really solution for water when they run out of their local water supply for the groundwater and such is DPR. And so, yes, we need to push that. That needs to be something we focus on both in Arizona and in the country. I know the EPA last year came out with a initiative for going for recycled water and DPR. So I think those things are coming, but we need to continue to push. That's an area that needs to continue to be pushed forward because it is that next water source. As far as community involvement and such, and as I mentioned with our Citizens Academy and such, communities need to be involved in these decisions. And the way to get them involved, water is a unique. I found in my many years in the water business, most people take it for granted. You turn on your tap, you expect, at least in the United States, you turn on your tap, you expect good water to be there. You don't worry about it. We got to pull people out from that. We in the water industry have kind of created that. We like that image. You turn it on, it's great. No problem. Don't have to worry about it. We like that image, but there needs to be more awareness of that. If we make people more aware, we can get the informed public, the informed city councils, the informed people in the government to make good decisions with water and to help us in the water industry advance sustainable water practices. So I firmly believe in our academy, and while I can't educate through our academy, even in our website and other things, I can't educate everybody. But we tell our academy grads, we want you to be advocates for us out there in the community to spread that word. You know, if we educate 30 people and they each then go out and each one of them reaches 10 more, well, now we got 300. If they reach 20, we got 600. So it can multiply tremendously if folks, you know, leave our academy and then let others know about the good things that in Scottsdale we're doing. And I encourage that to any water provider. I've made presentations on that in the past, for any water provider to have an academy or a similar type of way, mechanism of reaching their public and educating them.
Yeah, thank you. That's really great strategy. Michael has another question.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry to interrupt. We have two questions before Michael. Sorry, Michael. Jorge Aponte.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. It was a very interesting conference. I am wondering, how do you plan this change using automation and digitalization?
Well, automation is extremely important for us. I mean, I talked about our control room, our optimization control room, and how that was critical for us. We continue to leverage optimization. Part of it's getting the communication networks in place, and I know we have initiatives to continue to increase our fiber communications, because we still have some areas that have radio communications, so we work for fiber communications. And again, we try to work that technology across the realm, from our web portal all the way to our control systems within our treatment facilities and throughout our distribution and collection systems. They are critical. We continue to want to leverage them. I've got a team of folks that do nothing but that. It's my SCADA group. SCADA is a supervisory control and data acquisition, which is really that computer interface that does the operational point at our treatment facilities and systems, as well as I got a business group that works on IT related issues. So we continue to look at leveraging those as we go forward. It's always tough. They're big investments. We make investments in everything, and you've got to weigh the impacts of those investments to the money available to us. I will go back and I'm sorry, I will go back and mention about doing smart investments, because if you look at Scottsdale's rates, and we compare ourselves to the Valley cities, we're right in the middle. We're not the highest provider, and we're not the lowest. And I think while we have these large challenges of elevation and providing water at different elevations that are very different, to say, from a Chandler and Gilbert that are fairly flat cities, yet in spite of that, our costs are right there in the middle. So I think it's important for us to, and we weigh those factors.
Thank you. Professor Vasil has another question.
Yeah, it's the only question I have, really. Thank you. Very interesting presentation, very informative. I have been working with drinking water for a great number of years, and I'm always interested in water quality. I wonder if our speaker can address any challenges or any issues that may have come up as the drought keeps affecting everyone, and I would imagine their water treatment plants as well.
Yeah, and I mentioned early on about forest fires, and that definitely has had an impact on our water quality, and is a big impact. On the Colorado River, not so much per se. It's been fairly standard, but it's a great question. I'm not sure, as they change, as the low levels get lower, I think we're open to that. I know CAP is putting in some more water quality stations and is ramping up its water quality analysis for us, which is important for us to get through. I think water quality is also a big deal as we work to optimize things. When I first came into the industry, when we provided water, we had storage tanks out in the system, and we had massive amounts of storage because we worried about fires. And so we wanted to have enough water for fires. We didn't worry about how long it sat in those tanks and such. And that's dramatically changed as we looked at disinfection byproducts and how to manage water age throughout our system. So we've, through our optimization control rooms, allowed us to do that, to be much more proactive about turning tanks over, making sure our water age stays low, and trying to avoid any issues with disinfection byproducts out in our system. And I think the disinfection byproducts are continue to be something that systems have to worry about through the drought and just how we develop our systems. And then, of course, there's lead and coppers coming out now, and that's gonna impact folks as we go through. I think Scottsdale's fairly buffeted from that because of the age of our system being pretty new. As I mentioned, we started as a water provider in 1971, and there's some homes that are prior to that, but nothing like some of the older cities in the Midwest and East Coast.
Thank you. And now, Michael, it's your turn.
Brian, hi. Mike Bobker from City University of New York. Really great presentation. So much that you've done. A couple of weeks ago in one of these webinars, David Sampson, who you probably know, mentioned that 70% of Arizona's water was agricultural use. I'm wondering if agriculture is part of your system scope, whether you have much agriculture in your municipality. If so, how that weighs in, and if not, how whether you plan on a kind of an integrated resource model in any wider circles beyond the municipality.
Great question. And no, we don't really have agriculture. We had agriculture as the city's developed it. It had agriculture. Scottsdale was developed with a lot of ag around a city core. And that's why we have the SRP canals going through our city. But over time, that agriculture has disappeared. So we don't really have any agriculture in Scottsdale. We have it next to us in the Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian community, which is our neighbor.
So do you coordinate?
I think I lost you.
Perhaps his questions.
I had to turn off my video because I was dropping in and out.
So you said, do I coordinate? I'm assuming, do I coordinate
with communities, neighboring communities who have agricultural demand and may kind of impact your availability to you based on what they do?
We do work with the Salt River Pima Indian community. They have their own water supply and such, but we do communicate with them. And our big concern on our peripheries is they traditionally have had sufficient water, but is groundwater use. So we do communicate with Phoenix as well as the SRP MIC about groundwater use. Our concern is that we work hard to stabilize our groundwater table, and if others start pulling out, it really draws ours down as well. And so we communicate with them with the goal of having a stable water table all throughout the region. But as far as deliveries per se of water, that hasn't been that hasn't been a major concern. We do have interconnects. It's important, I think, in our industry to have these connections. I don't have a direct connect with the Salt River FEMA MIC, but we do have it with Phoenix, which is important because each of us needs to be able to back up the others in emergencies.
Thanks.
Thank you. Professor Hilary Brown.
Yes, I'm going to be without video, but thank you for the presentation. I'm curious about long-term horizons, and here in the East and in parts of the Midwest, the magnitude of flooding has become so remarkable, and the quantity of runoff, stormwater runoff, the damage it does. I look at that, others look at that. The question becomes, with the magnitude of the drought increasing in the far west and the southwest, are there discussions beginning at all in the water sector about long-term water, long distance water transfers? And if not, why not?
I know there are. It's really not. I mean, I go to been to some meetings and stuff where I've heard those discussions, but really those long transfers are done through larger organizations in the city of Scottsdale.
Sure.
Discussions on that level. So I can't say I've been on the periphery of some of those discussions. I think some of them are, obviously there's been discussions about, potentials for desal places, and then maybe transferring some water to Arizona from, if desal is done in California, maybe Arizona then can get the benefits through some of that water. Obviously, there's been discussions about possibilities of pulling water from as far as the Mississippi. I see that as doubtful that could ever come to be, but I know some of those discussions are, but I'm really probably not the guy to talk about that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, do you have any suggestions as to what organizations would be interested in those conversations, or who's leading those conversations?
Yeah, I think Department of Water Resources, the Arizona Department of Water Resources is the one that would be leading that, as they've gotten some direction from the state legislature in that area, as well as perhaps the Central Arizona Project.
Thank you.
Thank you all. I don't see any more questions. Professor Ching-Wen, do you want to make any closing remarks, or should we pass it to Cecilia?
Yeah, well, thank you again. I think the Arizona water is really complex. And as you mentioned, the CAP project is already a regional effort. We transport the water, right, thousands of miles from Colorado River. But I'm also wondering how sustainable this long distance, large regional system, can sustain. And it certainly is more complex with multiple stakeholders, hundreds, thousands of stakeholders involved to co-manage the water resources. So I don't know, do you have any kind of final closing comments on overall sustainability of water resources management?
Well, I think we've seen some very dramatic cooperation, and it came about through the DCP that occurred, and there are follow-on discussions to the DCP for the basin states on the Colorado River. And the State Department of Water Resources, as well as Central Arizona Project, has been leading those discussions. I've been in part involved in those discussions. So as to what comes after the DCP was really only envisioned as a short-term, I'm not going to say it's a fix, it was just a backstop to prevent the levels of the Lake Mead from dropping too low. Recognize the fact that those discussions, so what replaces the DCP in 2026 is really the key. And so those discussions along the basin states, I think, are key about the sustainability of the Colorado River Basin to providing this water to California, Arizona, Nevada, and how that mix goes. I think those discussions are going to be key, and they involve Department of Interior for a solution that's more sustainable. And again, it was recognized DCP is a backstop to prevent things from happening. Those other discussions have to kind of find a longer term fix of over allocation of the Colorado River and how to address that equitably. And that's the equitably part is going to be the contentious issue.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, I have kind of watched some of these conversations, and I agree that the equity, justice in distribution of water rights, it should be addressed and put forward. So thank you again for your time. I'll give the floor back to Cecilia.
Well, thank you, Brian, for the talk. And I do have one quick question before you go. Has any consideration in terms of pricing? I think we talked about, we take for granted that we just expect to have water, and it's really cheap the way that we get water. Considering what the energy sector has been doing, is they probably will consider to shave the peak demand. They have variable pricing schemes. Would that be ever happening in the water sector?
Well, we have addressed it in Scottsdale in our tiered rates. So we try to keep our basic tier. So the first 5,000 gallons are $1.65, $1,000. We keep them really we haven't raised those in I think 3 or 4 years. We've worked to keep that basic quantity of water with our rates very affordable. It's when you get to past that, when you talk about somebody that uses over 20,000 gallons a month, that we have ratcheted up our rates, and we'll continue to do so, so that we keep water affordable for the basic water needs. But if you're going to use a lot, you're going to pay a lot. And we think that that helps with conservation, because ultimately it hits people's pocketbooks. And two, it provides some of that equity that is a concern, that for your basic needs, water shouldn't cost much. It has to cost some, because we spend money cleaning it, getting it, and all those things. We try to keep that very affordable for the basic needs that people have.
Right. Thank you very much, Brian, for this wonderful talk, and learn a lot about the Scottsdale One Water project. And thank you everybody else for attending. Michael, sorry.
So this was great. Thank you.
Yeah. So everybody else, thank you very much for attending. We will be making this recording available on our website. Please follow our conversation. If you have further questions, feel free to continue the discussion on our website. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful weekend, everybody.
Thank you.